In the city, last year, when it was budget time, there was a discussion about stopping the percent for art. You aware of that? Or cutting it back, or doing something, because people say, some people say, that, you know, everybody's cutting. Everybody's cutting. Once again this year we have a hard budget time, and here we are thinking of, the comparison is of getting rid of police and fire, and here we are doing the percent for art. And so can you, and the percent for art, we should clarify that it is, do you want to tell us, explain how much it is per?
It was for all capital improvement projects in the city, and it's 1% of the construction cost for a capital improvement project, with a cap per project of $250,000.
Right, and that money can be pooled so that you can have a lot of water, you know, funded projects.
It could be pooled so you can use it on another project that maybe is not specifically related to the capital improvement project. So
right.
if it's a utility project, for example, that money could be pooled and to be used somewhere else. In
another, with a
utility.
Right.
So,
Connected to another utility.
So first, let's address this issue that has come up on council. You know, that what do you say? I mean, obviously, council did not do it. They didn't cut it back, and they didn't stop it. But again, there's a budget crunch.
Well,
first,
go ahead.
You know, one of the things about the percent for art is it's based on the capital projects. And so if the city of Ann Arbor chooses to do fewer capital projects because of the economy and because of the, you know, financial challenges, then automatically that same proportion of the percent for art is less. If there are fewer capital projects and fewer dollars spent in capital projects, then there are fewer dollars available for percent for art. So it's kind of a adjusting or regulating kind of fund that has everything to do with what the city is investing in their capital projects.
So the question is, to make the point, can the firemen be paid from this percent for art?
Well, I'm not a...
I think the answer is they cannot.
Right.
In other
Right,
words, this is a capital, but that is what is said, because we're talking about...
It comes
although I think you're presenting a false dichotomy.
Okay.
I think you're saying that it's art or firemen. I think it's...
And I'm saying,
I would say that argument seems to be the one that's presented, and instead, the real argument is the city does many, many things. And so if you want to have a candid conversation about the value of everything, whether it's planters downtown or bike racks or handball courts or the paddle boats or the golf course that we pay for, whatever it is, then you can, but to make it about one thing or another thing, I think it's politically manipulative. I think it's a form of punditry, and that then it comes down to, you know what, I like parks, but I don't like public art. So we should fund parks, but we shouldn't fund public art. And I don't know that that's necessarily the best way to be handling the way we fund our city.
All right. And the other part of that is, because the money, let's say it comes from water project, you have to do something that's water related. The question is the tail wagging the dog? What is the impact of having your funds so directed?
You know, I think that while if it's water funded, that it needs to be water related. There are several different funds that the monies come from, and we have not found it it has not been a real challenge for us yet to make sure that we're making that thematic connection. Okay. We don't think it's limiting the types of art. We don't think it's limiting where we're looking at art projects. So we're careful to make sure that there is some connection, obviously, between the funds and the theme. But we haven't found it restrictive yet, or
Okay.
But if, I would say that it's not ideal. I mean, it's obviously, you know, an ideal situation would be that you have a fund and you create assets in your community that as you know, see fit that they, but, you know.
regardless of where they come from.
Regardless of where they come from, but, you know, that's not the way the world works. And
Right.
that's certainly not the way Michigan works. Michigan has, and I can't talk about the finer points of ordinances and laws, that's not
Right.
my bailiwick.
Right.
But you operate within the strictures
Right.
that you have. And
Right. Are we the only community, in Michigan that has percent for art?
as I
think
understand
so.
it.
I think
yeah.
that we are the only one. So your first big project, but I mean yours, I mean the commission's first big
preceded me,
project,
yeah.
yes, was, and still is, the police courts building. Now it's the whole thing with Larkham is being called the Municipal Center. It's a huge undertaking, I think, for a new commission.
Nightmarish?
Yes, and I think I'd like you to discuss this controversy because you chose Dreisaitl, and that provoked some controversy because there was no RQ request for qualifications or RFP, and he's not from Michigan, and so there was a negative reaction to that. Can you explain why those steps were taken, why Dreisaitl was chosen?
Well, what I'd like to say is that the ordinance provides for a lot of different ways that artists can be selected. And so the Dreisaitl selection was done according to the ordinance.
Right.
And it's not always the same way. We have a lot of different situations. We have the ordinance needs to be flexible. So Dreisaitl was selected with the ordinance. Yes, it was controversial at the time because it was not, I mean, some folks thought it should have been a Michigan
Yes.
artist. And so in this case, he was selected because of his unique ability to bring stormwater management, which is a very important part of both the City of Ann Arbor's mission and that project's mission, and how to combine that in an interpretive and visual way with art and with that project. So it was a unique situation, and at the time that was a good fit, and it was done consistent with the ordinance.
My understanding was there were a couple of things. One, that he was here visiting for Huron River, and there was the chance to be, and also that it was timing, that he has this expertise because Germany really does work hard on its stormwater. So I just wanted to make sure that I was correct, that was the case. And then that he, because the project was already advanced and was moving along. But my understanding is that now that you're looking for the north courtyard and the Justice Center, that you're going to have a different process. Is that correct? That you're...
Yeah, well, from what I understand, and I think I missed that commission meeting, but from what I understand, I think as a commission we seem to be wanting to create a process that from anyone looking outside is very understandable.
Right.
And I think that whether you have the latitude or not to do things a certain way, you know, sometimes the public responds and you want to do things in the way that makes sense to the public. And so
Right.
I think any commission tries to be, you know, this is unlike the rest of the commissions in the city, which have long institutional memories.
That's why I'm saying it was
in a lot of
huge
cases,
project
yeah,
to
it's making
undertake.
things up as you go along, and
Right.
and you
Huge.
and you know the city's learning how to deal with it, and so are we.
Right.
You know, it was interesting because when I originally wrote my essay about public art and percent for the arts, a criticism I had put in there was, I don't, it feels like this is an Ann Arbor thing, that we feel like we're going to do it our way and that we're going to, we'll find our way through it.
Right.
And I had said, we have a city 1 hour away that has a 30-year track record with public art. It would have been nice to have gone to talk to them and say, so how do you run your public arts program?
So,
But it didn't happen and it could have
Right.
not happened for any variety of
Right.
reasons. But I think that we're learning
Right.
painfully how we need to adjust.
Yes, so it seems, that's why I bring it up, that the process, my understanding is there's going to be an RFQ, a request for qualifications, and an RFP, and that the person, has to be from Michigan. So
But,
it'll be
Sometimes.
but that was not.
in this next one.
Yeah. That process, though, the decision to look for other artists in the municipal center
Yes.
was not a decision based on we wanted to change the process.
Right.
There's a task force for the municipal center. What actually the discussions that occurred at the commission, at the APAC commission, was we wanted to make sure that we were that we had an understanding now that what the cost of the main dry-settle piece was going to be. There were two other dry-settle pieces that were intended to go in the interior, and as we went through the design process, which is natural as you get a better sense of what the cost is, we thought that maybe fewer pieces in the municipal center would be a better way for us to look at the funding and the allocation. So it wasn't that we thought the process originally was flawed. What we wanted to look at was rather than 3 dry-sidle pieces, we wanted to focus
Open
on
it up.
one additional piece, and we wanted to open it up at that point.
Right,
So
right.
that's why
Right.
there's a different process there.
Right, well, I mean, I think the process probably will get more praise opening it up. I mean, that's just, and there was also the cost of the dry cycle, which seemed to be going higher than originally.
I think many of us were uncomfortable with the
Right,
direction it was going.
right, right.
And I think that's natural in any process. Things evolve and people have different
absolutely.
expectations. And, one of the things I praise the commission for is that they did say, wait a minute, this isn't what we
Right.
anticipated. We need to rethink this.
Definitely, definitely. So just in our last few minutes, you're going to have a gateway project. Has that been picked already? Has the site been picked for a gateway?
It has not been picked. We had put a gateway project in our annual plan
Yes.
Last year. There are several gateways clearly in the city of Ann Arbor, so
Who will choose the site? Will the commission and the task force choose it, or?
Yes, a task force will choose it. What we're looking at right now is looking at the opportunities. We'll kind of discuss the pros and cons. Sometimes you want to have things in alignment if other projects are going on, particularly in the city. So one of the things we've had a discussion is, does it make sense to do something along Washtenaw because there's some Washtenaw Avenue improvements and some reinvestment happening in Washtenaw Avenue, and if you can kind of pool resources and kind of enthusiasm, that might make sense. But there's several other gateways.
And, and I think there's also a split between the kinds of projects we can do. Sometimes the city kind of takes the lead and we become the facilitators.
Apparently that's happened, my understanding is the Fuller
Right.
Road Station, that the location, the materials to be used, everything was kind of decided before the commission even got into it. I mean, will that set a precedent? I mean, that doesn't seem to be.
Well, we're not a kingdom. We do
just
both functions.
Yeah, we want to
generate and
encourage
facilitate.
art. We want to encourage public art, and there's a lot of opportunities, like Jeff said. And we're only 9 people, and we're
Yes.
volunteers. So it's great if there's momentum moving forward. We don't need to be. We like to be involved, and obviously there's funding that we want to make sure is being spent wisely. But we don't need to be there at every single piece of the journey.
Right.
And
Are you working on the stadium bridges?
We've had preliminary discussions
We've had
about
some discussions. There's a
Oh,
lot
you have?
there's some opportunity there. So we've started to have some conversation with the
Because I remember when
design
they were
team.
talking about design and there was the thought of putting a big M up there, and then that was like,
Yeah.
you know, not, you
It's
know.
it's an MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation project, so that in itself has its own challenges because
Right.
they're not
I
as
mean, I
flexible
think
as
that
some
it's
places,
very
but-
interesting and challenging, all the groups that you have to interface with, to say nothing of the artist and is changing the design and everything. And I think we're going to run out of time, but you are also working with the DDA, right? That will be a separate, different kind of relationship, and probably give you more latitude because the money won't be tied to a particular source.
Potentially, yeah. And
Right.
we're hoping, like I'm starting the mural project, and I'm hoping that we can bring them in next year.
Oh, well, I thank you very much. I thank you, Jeff, and I thank you, Cheryl, for coming. It's really been very interesting.
Thank you.
No, thank
Oh,
you.
Well, and I thank you. I thank you all for watching, and write to us and let me know what you're thinking. And we'll see you next time. And remember, I always welcome other perspectives.